Thank you and good morning. It's a pleasure being here. For the last 2 years, Copenhagen Consensus has had experts researching how to best spend money to solve 10 of the world's big problems. Over the last week, we've had 8 of the world's top and most distinguished economists working together on the task of answering and ranking those answers to those problems. This gives us the ultimate overview of how global decisions can best be made and how we can best intend to spend money to do good in the world. I'm very proud to be here to present the result of the 2008 Copenhagen Consensus expert panel. So let's recap really quickly. What have we been up to this week? We started with one question. If we had an extra, say, $75 billion to put to good use, which problems should we solve first? In answering this one big question, we looked at 10 world challenges, as you can see up here, air pollution, conflicts, and so on. The new research we commissioned showed great need in each of these areas. But of course, the expert panel didn't spend this week talking about world problems. No, they talked about the solutions. They examined, measured, and compared different solutions to all these problems. The 10 new research papers we commissioned from specialist scholars show that we have the knowledge to do tremendous amounts of good in each of these areas. The papers set out proposals for the panel's consideration. Here you can see a few of these considerations. For instance, for air pollution, you can focus on diesel filters if you worry about outdoor air pollution, or better stoves if you worry about indoor air pollution. For conflicts, you can look at peacekeeping forces, or aid indeed. For diseases, you can think about mosquito nets or heart drugs, and the list goes on. This week, the expert panel came to Denmark and examined these proposals in detail. Each paper was discussed at length with its principal author and with 2 other specialists we commissioned to write critical appraisals. So, and this of course is why you've all come, what is the outcome? Let's first look at the bottom 10 of the 30 challenges. At the very bottom, we see proposals of combating climate change policies with mitigation only, essentially cutting CO2. The research paper for this topic was written by the UN Climate Change Panel of scientists. He concluded that the benefits of mitigation alone would actually be lower than the cost. Spending $1 would get less back than $1 worth of good. We also see that a combination of research and development into low-carbon energy technologies and mitigation is ever so slightly better, but also ranked very poorly. Elsewhere, we see outdoor air pollution solutions, which have very low benefit cost ratios when they're seen in a developing nation context, mainly because they're so expensive to work on. Let me take a look at some of the middle solutions, if you will. One thing that stands out is, for me at least, in dealing with HIV/AIDS, which is ranked at number 19. In 2004, of course, HIV prevention was ranked as the top priority. During the last 4 years, there's been a great deal more interventions and funding for HIV prevention and treatment programs. The expert panel concluded that when it came to additional funds of spending, HIV/AIDS was not the top priority. As we can see here, there's also a global warming solution, the research and development in low-carbon energy technologies, which is ranked very respectably at 14. There are other considerable benefits, for instance, focusing on tuberculosis. $1 billion spent here would save about 1 million lives. $500 million spent on battling malaria would save about 500,000 lives, most of them children. And treating heart attacks in developing countries would be very cost effective. We're really just talking about getting very cheap drugs to where they're needed. You might also want to look at the fact that we got the first conflict initiative in here. We didn't rank that last time, but this time we actually saw that peacekeeping in post-conflict situations, essentially sending UN peacekeeping troops, is placed at a respectable 18. So let's turn to the top solutions. The options that the Copenhagen Consensus 2008 finds of the highest importance and urgency. Let's look at the bottom. The number 10 is paying mothers to send their daughters to school. It doesn't just improve the chances of girls staying in school, which we know is important, but it also put money into the hands of women, which give them more power in the home and increases chances that the money will be spent on children. Moving up to number 6, we see something that isn't a very sexy issue, if you will, deworming. This high-ranking result came as a result of the experts hearing from both the education and the disease challenge paper authors. In both challenges, deworming of children was recommended as a solution. As Sue Horton, the malnutrition and hunger scholar, said earlier this week, we'd rather have the kids benefiting from nutrition than the worms benefiting. Let's also go on and move to the top 3. If we look at the third, we have micronutrient fortification. This is basically iodizing salt and fortifying flour and things like that with iron. Salt iodization prevents goiter. 3 in 10 families in the developing world don't have this protection. Iodizing salt just costs 5 cents per person per year. Fortifying products with iron cost as little as 12 cents per person per year. We know that iron deficiency leads to stunting and cognitive and developmental problems. For $286 million, we could get iodized salt and fortified basic products, foods, to 80% of the populations in the worst afflicted areas. The benefits are estimated to be somewhere around 9 times higher than the cost. This is a very, very good investment. Next up on the list, we see the Doha development round, where a comprehensive deal would have very positive results. The costs are obviously comparatively low, yet the potential benefits are incredibly large. The dynamic models from the experts actually estimate that the net benefit per year could be up to about $3,000 billion, 5/6 of which would accrue to the developing world. The top-ranked solution is addressing zinc and vitamin A shortages. Zinc deficiency is not something we hear a lot about, again, but perhaps we should. It causes cognitive problems in children, slowing down their development and their learning. And again, there's some great opportunities. Providing these micronutrients for 80% of the 140 million children who lack them would cost just $60 million a year. The yearly benefits would add up to about $1 billion. In effect, this means that each dollar does $17 worth of good. This is an astonishingly good investment, and I hope it's one that policymakers will take note of. And let's just briefly take a look at, so how should we spend $75 billion? If you take a look at this list, it shows you where we can spend millions of, and even billions of dollars and end up doing an amazing amount of good. I also want to emphasize that this, of course, depends on just how much money. The point is that if we make such a prioritized list, it's essentially a question of saying, spend first on the top, then on the second, third, fourth, and fifth, until you run out of money. And if you look at the first proposal, providing vitamin A and zinc, it's a very, very cheap option. Just because it ranks first doesn't mean it's where we should spend the most money, but it's where we would do the most good. Actually, we can do an amazing amount of good for relatively little money. And I think that, if anything else, is the most important outcome of the Copenhagen Consensus, showing us directly where can we do not just a little good, but a lot of good. So I think this really shows us that we do have good knowledge and information to make better choices. This provides evidence to charities, but politicians and democracies, to every one of us, that the check we write out to the world is not just something that goes to do a little good, but actually can do a lot of good. This is, if we're going to recap the conversation that we started on this Sunday, is about making sure we don't just focus on what's fashionable, but that we actually look at what's rational.